Today I'll be talking about kids in prison, and I will start by talking about kids born in prison. And kids being born in prison is actually a very common thing in the US, and it's especially common among the young generation because many teens enter the prison while they are pregnant. So it's not something that happens when they are already inside. But kids that are born in prison um, is kind of also born into a crisis because they obviously babies can live in prison, but they also can't live without their mothers. Um, and there have been a lot of discussions about whether the kids have to live with their mothers in prison or with a foster family, and people haven't come to a solution yet. But if we take a look at children's rights, and according to the U.S. Um, kids it is absolutely illegal for kids or children to live in a prison if they are under 13. And that's also why many kids grow up without even knowing who their real family is, because they were adopted since they were babies. And if we take a look at how kids are treated in prison, I don't think newborn kids are directly treated bad in prison, but when the mothers isn't treated in a good way or isn't treated right, then of course it affects the kid. But of course there are prison nurseries that helps in terms of taking care of the baby. As for the older kids that are in jail, they are not treated as good as newborn babies, of course. Quite the reverse. Many of the kids that are in jail are being abused in many ways, such as strip searches, for example. And these abusive practices can cause a lot of problems to the kids, such as physical harm and emotional trauma. And there are also kids that end up in adult prisons, which is even worse for the kid, because I guess the child already have a hard time living in a youth prison, and now moving to living with criminal adults. I think that will affect the kid more mentally than being abused in youth prison, because there are worse abusive practices in adult prisons than in youth prisons. And I think the kids that enter adult prisons are those who commit adult crimes. I don't think that, however, I don't think the punishment have to be the same if an adult and a kid commit the same crime, because obviously the adults have more control over themselves and know what they're doing, but kids don't have the same abilities of controlling themselves when they have to. Um, but even though many people have this kind of opinion, there are still many kids that are being um, punished punished the same punishments as adults in America. And for the last thing, I personally think that kids have to be punished for what they do, but in the right way. They can't just be abused like that, because that's just going to make the whole situation even worse for the kid, and it's not going to help at all. And if they're going to pick a punishment, then the judge have to keep in mind that it's a kid. And I know that they have to pay attention to children's rights, But sadly, in America, there are many judges that forget about it and and don't pay attention to it. So I think it's extra important to pay attention to children's rights in these kind of situations. And that's it.